Welcome to the Endure Hunt Podcast. Join me as I share my experiences as an emergent hunter, offer advice on how to overcome challenges, and pursue your passion for hunting. This is episode 20 of the podcast, and I'm going to be honest, I don't have a name for it quite yet. I will have one when this comes out, but this podcast is all about the preparation leading up to my upcoming Montana mule deer hunt. Now, if this is your first time listening to this podcast and you don't know who I am, thank you for tagging along and taking the time out of your day to listen to me. My name is Andrew Kosovic. I am an emergent hunter, first-gen hunter, adult onset hunter, whatever you want to call it. I started hunting back in 2018, and I went on a general elk, mule deer, non-resident combination license out in Montana. It was my first ever hunting experience, my first time hunting ever. Went with my best friend, Peter, and I was hooked ever since. In the years since then, I have I've hunted in 6 different states, hunted a bunch of different species, and I've fallen in love with hunting. And I'm sharing this podcast in hopes that I can be a resource for people who are a couple of years behind me, who are also emergent hunters, first-gen hunters, who are trying to figure this out on their own. If that is you, fantastic. Welcome. I'm happy to have you here. If you are already an experienced hunter, I do plan on sharing my own experiences, interviewing guests that you can still benefit from this, even if you have more years of hunting experience than myself. Perhaps our different experiences allow us to share and learn from each other in unique ways. Anyway, that's a bit about me. And now I want to talk a bit about this podcast, what this episode is all about. I'm actually recording this. I leave this upcoming weekend as of recording for Montana. And I wanted to record and kind of talk about the process that I've been taking to get myself ready to be prepared for this hunt. Now, this podcast, when you're listening to it, chances are, unless I am seriously lucky, this podcast is going to come out and I'm still going to be hunting. There's always a chance that we could fill our tags early. I don't usually have that kind of luck. It's usually a bit of a grind, hence the name Endure Hunt. But there is a chance. There's a chance we could fill those tags early. You never know with Montana. So let me set the stage for what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the hunt itself. So it is a public land mule deer general hunt in Montana. It's going to be myself, my best friend Peter, and his dad John. The 3 of us are going at it again. We hunted together in 2021 in Wyoming chasing pronghorn. I'm going to talk about the hunting setup. So we're focusing on a mobile setup, truck camping, not backcountry hunting. I'm going to talk about the actual preparation steps, specifically talking about what I did in terms of fitness, shooting, and the gear that I'm using. And then lastly, I'll talk about the expectations that I have for this hunt. I'm going to try and keep it high level. I don't want to drag this out and make this episode too long. So let's just dive right into it. For me, this is sort of a redemption hunt. I mentioned it in the beginning, but the first hunt that I ever went on was in Montana on a general tag, and this is a very similar type of experience. The first time I went was southwest Montana. This time I'm not going to be on an elk and mule deer tag. This time it is just a deer tag, and we are staying in relatively central Montana. I'm super excited to be going back because this is a chance at redemption. It all started in Montana, and this is by no means the last time I plan on hunting in Montana, but it does feel like I have a good chance now that I have 6 years of hunting under my belt that maybe I'll be able to figure it out. Now, it's my second time hunting mule deer ever, so we'll see. I have not spent a whole lot of time chasing mule deer. I have been reading about it, watching a bunch of YouTube videos and studying, but there's a big difference between what you can learn on the internet and actually executing and finishing in the real world on the ground. But honestly, right now, I'm just excited to be getting back out there. Life and work on the day job life side of things has been super stressful lately. And being able to disconnect, get into the grind, get into a hunting season is something that I'm very much looking forward to. I know Peter is looking forward to it as well, and I'm sure so is John. If you follow me on social media, you may have noticed that the last week I haven't really been posting much. And to be honest, it's just been because life has been a lot. It's been hard for me to prioritize social media over other things that are more important. Social media is great and all, and I'm trying to share the message of this podcast and get it out there for people. But at the end of the day, when it comes to prioritizing things, sometimes the podcast and social media have to take a back seat. I'm committed to releasing 2 podcasts a month, so I'm recording this and getting it out there. but I have been lacking a little bit on the social media side. Side note, if you're not following along, you should definitely follow me on Instagram at EndurHunt, ENDURHUNT. Even if I don't post all of the time, I'm on there regularly. I'd love to get a DM from you, respond to comments, or interact with you in any way. I really do enjoy talking to people on there. If I have service, I'm actually planning on posting stories and trying to post some updates while we're hunting, but to be honest, I'm not expecting to have much in terms of service, so we'll see how that goes. But if I have service, I will definitely be posting what it looks like out there and giving some updates on how the hunt is going. All right, enough about the redemption and the old hunt. Let's talk about this year's hunt, 2023. All right, so this is Montana. We are on a non-resident general deer combination license. Montana is a state that has some interesting and hard to understand draw regulations. This is a general tag for Montana residents, but you have to apply for it as a non-resident, and this license is based on a preference point. So preference points go to, in general, preference points go to the highest point holders. There is a slight caveat that they reserve a certain percentage, and I think it's 20%, but I could be wrong, for 0 point holders. 2 or 3 years ago, there were enough people that had points, that were building points, I should say, that the 0 point holders weren't really much of a factor and they never hit that threshold. However, that has changed, and in the last 2 years, you've actually had better draw odds with 0 points going into the preference point draw versus 1 point. Now, for us, we were planning this hunt, so we actually had 2 points going into the draw, which I don't think gave us 100% draw odds, but higher than 0 and much higher than 1 point. So this is a drawn hunt, but it is a general deer license. So you're hunting the general units in the state. This is not a limited entry draw. If you've never heard of a general deer combination license, and I think only Montana has that, you might be saying, well, what's the difference? This tag allows you to hunt whitetail deer and mule deer. So you can do either or, whatever opportunity presents itself or whatever you want to target. Now, they are pretty widespread throughout the state, but you should use, if you want to target one specifically, you should use a tool like Go Hunt or do some research to see where the species distributions are, because there are some areas where there's a lot of whitetail and not a lot of mule deer, and vice versa, although they do overlap a little bit. Due to the rough winter, these tags are normally either sex tags. So you could, with a general license, you could take a buck or a doe. But because of the rough winter and the winter kill that came along with it, particularly for mule deer, many units are antlered buck only. You have to read the regulations because it varies from hunting district to hunting district. For example, we're hunting 2 different regions in several different hunting districts. All but one hunting district are mule deer antlered buck only. Every single one that I looked at and every one that we've e-scouted has been either sex whitetail deer. I don't think they were hurt as bad by the rough winter as mule deer were. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I'm planning on holding out for a mule deer. I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the expectations for the hunt at the end of the podcast. But I think Peter and John are willing to take either, although I know we all preference mule deer over whitetail deer because, well, technically I can hunt mule deer in Texas, but they're nowhere near where I am. And for Peter and John, who live in Pennsylvania, they can only hunt whitetail deer. So we're all hoping to go for mule deer. And that's not to say that I wouldn't take the right whitetail buck, but I'm not going to shoot the first whitetail buck I see. I would hold out for one that really tickles my fancy. Now, we're focused on regions 4 and 6. I'm not going to get into more detail than that, but those are the general areas that we're looking at. They're right in the middle of Montana. And the thing that we're doing is focusing on some overlooked areas. There are a good amount of roads and trails, and a lot of people are probably going to be using side-by-sides and ATVs depending on the weather. But I suspect that there are going to be many drainages that are going to be overlooked because you won't be able to glass them from the road. I think even being willing to hike to a glassing knob that's only a half a mile or 3/4 a mile away from the road or the trail would be enough to get away from most of the people. I could be wrong, but that is the assumption that we're making going into it. We're trying to find those overlooked spots where we'll be able to get in, because this is a general tag and we are likely going to see the Orange Army all over the place. With that being said, let's jump into the camp setup. So we like to go in deep, carry everything we need, and try to get away from the crowds. In general, that is the way we like to approach things. However, John is a bit older and not as mobile as Peter and I are. We're going to be doing truck camping. We both have pickup trucks. Peter has a topper for his truck and has built a semi-permanent bed system in there for him and his dad to use. And then I have a bed rack from RCI Off-Road, and I have a rooftop tent that sits on that bed rack from Free Spirit Recreation. It's the High Country 55. I've had that for 2 or 3 years. I think 3 years. And it's the same one that I used in my Wyoming hunt, going for pronghorn with Peter and his dad last time. And it worked really great for me there. I've used it camping since, and I really do love that setup. It is so easy to use, set up and down in a few minutes, and ready to go to bed or ready to get back on the road, which is going to be important for us. We are planning on only staying in an area for 1 or 2 days at most, and trying to focus on moving, glassing, and trying to see where the bucks are. We did not have time to do on-the-ground scouting, so we don't have any idea whether or not the spots that we're glassing are even going to have bucks in them. So we want to focus on, all right, if we can't get deep and try to get away from people, we need to be focusing on high mobility. And we're trying to find that right blend between, all right, let's hike in a mile or two, get away from the road or the trail, try and glass, see if we see any signs, see if we see any bucks or does, any deer at all, to be honest. If we can see signs of life, that will tell us, okay, let's wait. But if we don't see anything, then we're going to be willing to move, and we're not going to stick around for a long time. We're planning on covering a lot of different ground in a lot of different areas, and that means that we can't get hung up in one spot. I say that now, but it could be difficult for us to move. We tend to always think that if we just go over the next ridge, that we'll find something. So as I'm saying that right now, we have multiple different spots that we've been looking at, and we're planning on sticking to those spots, and I hope that we can. But sometimes when you get out there and you get your gut feeling, it's hard to fight that gut feeling. So we will see what actually happens, but that is currently the plan. In addition to looking at the spots that we think are going to be overlooked, we're also planning on sticking, at least some of our spots are pretty close to private land boundaries. We aren't sure exactly when the migrations are going to be happening. We suspect that there's going to already be bucks moving to and from the private onto the public, either to bed or feed or whatever. So we do have several spots that are basically on that border or corner of various pieces of private and public land coming together. We'll see how that goes. I've never really done that before. Overall, though, that is kind of our high-level strategy. We're planning on staying very mobile, being willing to hike half a mile or two off of the trail to try and get away from the people. We'll probably do some glassing from the roads, but the emphasis is going to be on, all right, let's find glassing knobs that we can hike to quickly and are able to get at from wherever we're camping. And we're going to do dark to dark. We are not planning on coming back and hanging out at camp during the day. We want to be out there looking for deer and being glassing when the sun comes up and goes down when they're going to be most active. So that is our camp setup and roughly a high-level view of what our strategy is. Let's talk about the actual preparation side of things. The first thing I actually want to talk about is the e-scouting portion of it. I didn't put that in the high-level overview, but as I've been talking, I realized that somehow I didn't put e-scouting in my notes for things to talk about, and that's incredibly important. Although I had issues with Go Hunt Maps last year, we're giving it a shot again, and the primary reason I'm giving it a shot is because of the hunts feature. You can build a custom hunt tracker into your content, and you can share that with your friends. So Peter and I each have a hunt that is for this, a hunt collection, and we are adding points. We've already shared it to each other. So as soon as I add a new point to my hunt, a new waypoint that is, it will show up in his Go Hunt Maps, desktop and mobile version. And if he does the same, I'll get to see his new points. So it's extremely easy to share, and we wanted to give it a shot. Go Hunt Maps also added historical imagery, which is a new tool that we've been playing around with. So we're trying to give Go Hunt Maps another try. That being said, the things that I'm looking for in general, I'm looking for those roads because we need to find a place that we can camp. So roads, 2-track roads, areas that we can drive with our trucks that are off-road capable. Trying to find those roads and then looking for different drainages that have edge habitat and a little bit of mixed terrain that could potentially hold bucks. We're also trying to find glassing points. Glassing is the name of the game from what I've read and watched on YouTube, but this is only my second time hunting mule deer, so take it for what it's worth. Glassing is supposed to be the name of the game, and I am focusing on finding glassing knobs. I've been looking at some old burns as well. If we can find a burn that has what we're looking for, going for it. We're also looking at those private land, public land boundaries and seeing where other people might be overlooking those spots. I'm not paying too much attention to water because I don't think that that's going to be an issue because of how much snowpack there was this last winter. I think that there will be plenty of food and water. So I'm mostly trying to find, all right, where are they going to be hiding? Where is that cover going to be? And that's kind of where the emphasis is for us in terms of our scouting. Now, the one thing that I will say, I do like Go Hunt Maps. The 3D Maps is great. I use Onyx, and that's great too. But you cannot beat Google Earth's maps. Please, if you take nothing else away from this, as part of your e-scouting, use Google Earth Maps. Google Earth has the highest resolution imagery you're going to find, and you can set it up so that it really looks like you are sitting down on the ground glassing. Use it. It's free for the desktop. I think I've tried using the mobile version. I'm pretty sure they used to have one. I haven't tried it in a couple of years if they still do. It's not nearly as good. You got to do it on the desktop. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of preparation was fitness. I've made an entire podcast about this. I am a huge proponent of staying physically fit throughout the entire year. I work out at least 4 days a week, probably much more than that, to be honest, but 4 days can count in for like vacations and holidays and stuff. Normally, I have a pretty mixed weights and cardio breakdown, and about 2 months ago, I transitioned to focusing heavily on cardio. I run 3 days a week, and I do weighted rucks twice a week, and I'm also doing my weight workouts focusing on core as well as legs, so lunges, squats, a lot of kettlebell work actually. And I'm using a 70-pound pack right now. I've literally just got basically a sandbag in the backpack that I use and bring with me on all my hunts. That is mostly what I'm doing in terms of my physical fitness preparation. I want to make sure that I'm able to pack out and get in without any issues. That is the biggest thing for me. If you listened to my elk podcast and my fitness podcast, one of the things I talked about was how tired my arms got and my hands got when I was skinning out that elk. That is still a consideration for sure. I have been doing grip strength exercises, but I haven't been focusing on that nearly as much as I have been focusing on, all right, let's do strength work and endurance work for my legs and my back. Shooting is the next thing that I wanted to talk about. And to be honest, my shooting preparation is vastly different than it has been in years past. Normally I have access to a private ranch in South Texas where I can shoot out to 1,000 yards, but between life for both of us actually, and work schedules, I was not able to get out there this year, unfortunately, particularly because I wanted to wait until I got my suppressor. I'm going to be bringing my suppressor with me. I have a Silencer Central Banish 30 suppressor. I've been shooting it, and oh my goodness, it is so great. It makes it so much quieter. It's crazy how much different it is, and it's so easy to take shots again. Getting back on target if I need to take a second shot is just going to be, so much better. So much better. Now, that being said, I have been shooting at a public range. I've gotten it out to 300 yards. I'm also shooting, it's my 308. I'm shooting Hornady Superformance 150 grains. I really like this round. I have a lot of them. I used it on my Wyoming pronghorn hunt, killed my buck at 430 yards, I think. and it had great terminal performance. I really trust and like this round. I feel very confident in it. Now, I like to shoot further, but the public range that I had access to only lets me go out to 300 yards. To make up for that, I have a Huskama optic. I use their Blue Diamond 5-20 by 50. That is a great optic. I think I've had it for 3 years and I've used it on all of my rifle hunts since then. I really do love that thing. Huskama also has a ballistic calculator, and I got all of my measurements and environmental factors entered in, and that thing was spot on. Every single dial adjustment I needed to make at the range was perfect. Because I'm confident in my shooting, and I've used their ballistic calculator and this optic and this rifle before, all this setup minus the suppressor, that's the only real difference. I'm going to trust the ballistic calculator out to 400 yards. So realistically, I probably could go further. I am very comfortable shooting out to 600 yards even, but because I haven't actually done it with this entire setup, I do not want to push it past 400 yards. I am confident in the ballistic calculator getting to 400, but I don't want to push it past that. I'm worried the drop might change too much or something will get missed. I don't want to take that chance, so 400 yards is going to be my cutoff. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of preparation is gear. I have a couple of new additions that I'm going to bring. Living in Texas, even during the December hunting period, because I don't think we really have much of a hunting season in January. Not on public land anyway. Because it doesn't get that cold here, I haven't really added too much to my cold weather gear, but for this hunt, I actually did get a couple of new additions. I bought puffy pants. I've never had puffy pants before. They are Black Ovis 800 gram down insulated puffy pants. They are zip off ones, so you don't have to get undressed to throw them on. You can put them right over what you're wearing. I love that because they're very versatile. I've got puffy mitts, glassing mitts. They're First Light ones. I actually bought them a year or two ago. I think I bought them for my Arizona hunt and I ended up not needing them, but I have them this year and I am bringing them this year because it's going to be cold and I'm going to be out all day glassing a ton. There's not going to be as much walking and hiking as I did in Arizona. At least I don't think so. And then the last thing I added were these puffy socks. I don't actually know why they're called socks, but I'm essentially planning on bringing them and using them as glassing booties. I have my insulated and my uninsulated boots. I'm planning on bringing both of those, and I'll probably be spending most of my time wearing the insulated boots. I wanted to bring these puffy booties, socks, or whatever, and bring those in case when I'm glassing and my feet maybe they got a little sweat in them, I want to swap out my socks, switch those over to new, clean, dry ones, and then put the puffy booties on to keep my feet warm and kind of let those boots dry out a little bit. That's what I think now. I may or may not actually end up doing that. We'll see. But those are all the new additions that I have. The nice thing about using this truck setup is I have the ability to bring more gear than I probably actually need. So I am bringing extra warming layers, extra base layers, more gear than I could possibly need, and I'll end up leaving it in the truck. If I end up being really cold one day, I'll probably bring more gear in my pack the next day. Outside of new gear, I did an overview of all of my medical stuff. I check it every single season, replace anything that's expired, make sure everything's up to date, still good. I stress the medical stuff because that will send you home early. If you end up getting sick, something's wrong with your stomach, that will send you home before most things. And plus, if someone does get injured, God forbid, you want to be able to take care of yourselves and make sure everybody stays safe. So first and foremost, I focus on checking all of my medical gear, making sure everything is good to go. The next thing for me in terms of priority is my Garmin inReach. I make sure that my Garmin plan is working. I test the tracking, test the text messages. I want to be able to stay in touch with my wife. I like talking to her. I don't use hunting trips as an excuse to get away from her. And I want to make sure I can at least send her text messages every day. I tend to not have good service on any of my hunting trips, so this Garmin inReach is a lifesaver. It could also literally be a lifesaver with the SOS option, but hopefully I never need to use that. Next is batteries. You can never have too many batteries, I feel like. I always carry extras of everything for the rangefinder, for flashlights. I do like rechargeable stuff, so I also bring battery packs, plural. I usually bring a couple of them. I have a battery remote jump starter. I don't know the brand of it. If anyone is interested, you can ask me and I'll see what model it is and I can tell you on Instagram or on a YouTube comment. That also can be used as a charging device. And I am near my truck, so if I really needed to, I've got an inverter and I could recharge things as needed. I will have probably more than a week's worth of battery charging capabilities. And then for anything else, I have regular batteries. So I should be good on the battery front, but that is also incredibly important. I'd like to assume that I'm going to be lucky and get something. So I've got Black Ovis game bags. I have their game bag kit. I really like that. Always bring with me the tag, zip ties, electrical tape, just in case, and a pair of gloves. I like to use gloves. They don't always last, but I always try to use gloves to keep everything safe and clean. Then, in order to get to the point where I can use the game bags, you need good knives. I went through, and I've already done a little bit of whitetail hunting this season, so I went through, sharpened all of my knives, honed everything, made sure they were all good. I do like fixed blades, but I also have a Gerber, the Randy Newberg version of the replaceable blade system that he has for elk. I have a few new blades there, and I also honed a few from last season that I used. I've also got a field sharpener in case I do need to resharpen anything while I'm out there, although I think I have plenty of knives that I won't need to do that. And the last thing from gear I thought that people would be interested in and might ask about is optics. So I already talked about the optic that I have on my rifle, but in terms of glassing, I'm going to bring my spotter and I'm going to bring my binos. I'm actually bringing my wife's binos. She has 12 by 50 Vortex Crossfires, I think. And I have the Vortex Viper 20 to 60 by 85 spotting scope. I really like that thing. It's a bit big, but it is worth the extra weight in carrying it around when you think you see something and you want to confirm what it is, or if your binos just can't go far enough. I really love that spotting scope. It is worth the money. All right, and the final segment of this podcast is going to be my expectations for the hunt. And I will just say it quickly. I don't really have too much in terms of expectations, if I'm being completely honest. I am mostly looking forward to just getting out there again. I have not been to or driven through Montana since that hunt in 2018, and I haven't seen Peter since our hunt last year in Utah doing archery elk. I always love being able to spend a week out there hanging out with him with no other distractions. I really cherish that time. We don't really get to see each other that much now that I live in Texas. I would love to get some redemption in Montana and kill my first mule deer. That would be amazing. And I don't plan on being picky. I am a proponent of getting experience and building experience. And as much as I think it's great to try and build up a healthy population by focusing on older age class animals, I do think that when you are in the beginning of your hunting career, you need to benefit as a hunter from experience of filling tags. If you aren't able to fill tags on an immature animal or a doe, then how can you expect to fill one on a trophy mule deer? Or any animal for that matter? You've got to get the repetitions and understand how to be a good hunter before you can really start holding yourself to a higher standard. I will not hold out. If it gets me excited, I'm going to shoot it. Period. That being said, I am going to try and hold out for a mule deer. I said it in the beginning of the podcast, I think, but if the right whitetail walks out and it gets me excited, yeah, I'll probably take a shot. But going in here right now, my freezer is not empty. I have plenty of meat. I am not desperate for it. I want to get a mule deer. That's what I'm going for. In terms of filling tags and the priorities, that's something that's always interesting to talk about with different people who are going out on a hunting trip together. I think John is going to be the first priority. This will be his second Western hunt ever. He's also a bit older, and we don't know how much longer he's going to be able to go out there and do this. So John, first and foremost, he's our number one priority in terms of who gets an opportunity to fill a tag. Peter is next. He did not fill any of his tags last year, as far as I know, and he hasn't had any luck in the whitetail season yet this year. So when it comes to prioritization, John goes first, then Peter, then me. What we've done in the past, even when it's just Peter and me, is we change opportunities on stocks. So one person goes, then the next person's up, and then so on and so forth. So it'll probably go that way. John goes first, then Peter, then me, and we'll just keep rotating until the tags are hopefully all filled. That would be nice. And if I don't fill my tag and John and Peter do, I would be totally happy with that. I would much prefer they fill their tags over me. Not that I wouldn't be happy to fill my tag if it's my turn and an opportunity comes and works out. But they are the number one priority in my opinion. All right, that is everything. This podcast is coming out while I am hunting for mule deer in Montana, so it's really exciting. If you're listening to this when it comes out, I am still out there. If you're listening to it after the fact, you're probably just going to want to go to my Instagram and see whether or not we were successful, because I will definitely post it there. If you're not following me already, I'm at Endure Hunt on all of the platforms, ENDURHUNT. Would love to have you follow along, send me a message, let me know what you think of the podcast. Please do reach out and let me know if there's anything that I didn't talk about in enough depth, or maybe I didn't talk about at all that you would have liked to hear on this podcast. I would be happy to make an episode dedicated to the things that y'all want to hear. All right, that is it. That is this podcast, episode 20, I think, in the books. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this. Time is our most valuable asset, and I don't take it lightly that you're spending your valuable time with me. Thank you so much, and I'll see y'all next time.